apologize for the noise, but first there are a few things I have to preface. I define immaturity in a very particular way, and I'm aware that some of these arguments are not exactly, they're quite generalizations, and I'm aware of that. This assertion needs to be researched on and peer-reviewed and studied much more before anyone can say with any level of surety. So first, how do I define immaturity? To me, it is the inability to do things yourself, or to take responsibility for those actions. Thus, that to delegate the action and thus the responsibility to something else, that is immaturity. You can do this with your parents. You can do this with God. You can do this with a coin. You can do this with anything. If you make that thing responsible for your actions and thus blame them instead of yourself, obviously, to some degree, you could be right. They are, in some part, to blame. But it is, in my consideration, immature to do so constantly and all the time. A good excuse to escape blame is to simply not be the doer or not be the primary doer. I believe immaturity is the thing that is not remedied by age exactly. It's remedied by something that comes with age. Experience, varying experience, and being challenged. To not experience a thing means that you do not really grow from it. If I had to quote my mother, she says, God can send you a million things to try to teach you a lesson. And if you do not learn the lesson that he's trying to teach you, he'll continue doing so. So, what then alleviates immaturity? Some may say therapy, some may say education, some may say meeting people. I agree, kind of. The problem with these statements is that with therapy, people are usually referring to CBT, and not all people would serve to benefit from CBT, because CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, tells you why or how your behavior is good or bad, wrong or right. And if you're aware of this, how is that going to help you? It's not going to cure you exactly. It's just going to tell you what you probably already know. And on a second degree, what you know doesn't really help you sometimes, because knowing is not really the same as processing and understanding and healing and growing from it. And that's a feature of immaturity, to be aware but not really to have any understanding beyond that awareness, beyond that knowledge. It remains knowledge, not wisdom. And then in the realm of education, because there's an attack on education and there are clearly alternatives to education, such as, say, learning philosophy from a YouTube video, from TikTok, or from just someone's texts instead of reading the text themselves. Of course, there is some aspect of elitism that makes you unable to access these things, but to cite that as your source, as if none of these things are also very readily available if you search it online or at all at a library, well, yeah, that's another problem. You have access to so many things where a limit does not really exist, where regulations are not enough, where you can theoretically find anything, anywhere, all the time, even if there's not that same degree of safety or surety or, just general accuracy of the data or knowledge that you acquired. And there's a third thing, also within the internet, but since the first one was about, say, therapy and our associations with emotional maturity and knowledge itself being, if we know it, we know it, but it's not really knowing it the same as understanding and comprehending it. And for the second one, the attack on education and the alternatives to education may also make us acquire data or information that we cannot actually really understand, because our version of knowing is, memorizing to some extent. The third one being related to social media, which runs personalized algorithms which create or can serve to create echo chambers, which constantly reinforce your already preconceived notions. And so it will not challenge you. It may give you access to things that will not also challenge you, because you can search it up yourself if you'd like. And you may think you know of something, but you may not really understand it. These three things, if combined, creates immaturity that thinks itself mature and immaturity that thinks itself right. And can that still be combated? As you can read, it says yes. It's going to be hard to combat these things, but it's not going to be impossible. Because a lot of these things, if you look at them, they're designed for convenience sake. And convenience for convenience sake is the true enemy of progress. But obviously that's twofold, because convenience was also made for reasons other than convenience's sake, specifically utility. It needed to be used by some, while to others it simply makes using it easier. Some people need touchscreens, and now everyone uses them, even though it was designed as for people with disability, or screen readers, or all of these other things. A lot of these things were designed accommodations for the disabled, but not all of us are disabled. And so for them, it makes them able to do things. For us, it makes us, to some extent, less able to do things, because we relegated the action of doing them and the responsibilities that come with that to something else. This can be our parents, this can be God, this can be AI, this can be absolutely anything. For me, it's a coin. Sometimes when I cannot choose, or I do not want to choose because choosing becomes very annoying for things as inane to me as picking what to eat, I flip a coin and it chooses. But I can still choose to listen to whether the coin says. That's a flippist ideology. You can choose to listen if it says heads, you can choose to do the opposite and take tails. Or the opposite of that, which is to not listen to it at all, as when it flips and you can see it about to land, you know which one you actually wanted to land on, and that also helps you choose. But that's still relegating that responsibility of choice on the coin in my case. So even I have some degree of immaturity, because there are some decisions that I don't want to do, and I relegate it to a coin. Because we are not used to dealing with these things, it can atrophy us. At least that's what some of the researchers say. But obviously, this is a sentiment that has been fearmongered for a long time, and we need greater research on that to be actually sure that it is atrophying us. Because in my opinion, it's not the thing existing that is a problem. The coin existing does not demand that I flip it and make it choose for me. The calculator existing does not mean that I'm going to immediately go to that instead of thinking of the answer myself. The tool exists, but we still use it. And would you learn anything if you constantly use these things? If you don't need them, specifically. Because if you do need them, of course, use them. You need them. But if you don't need them, are you making yourself need them by not being able to do without them? And that is bad. This problem has permeated outside of just the academe and into just our lives in general. Because remembering is not the same as knowing. Knowing is not the same as understanding. And understanding is not even really understanding it, because you can still be wrong. We need to face the difficulty of things, to be challenged, to be able to admit wrongness, and to be able to talk about these things without that unconscious sense of superiority in us. We need to go beyond the self. And superiority that comes with believing yourself more mature, better, smarter than anyone else, because you reinforce that kind of. You let yourself arrive at that position that you're currently at of thinking. You delegated the act of thinking sometimes to something else. The act of the act to something else. You can very much not be mature, not be better, not be smarter, just as you can be mature, can be better, can be smarter. But you cannot be the one to declare that. It's not something to self-declare. We need to wade through cognitive dissonance again, and we cannot teach others to wade through it when we ourselves aren't really able to. Overall, it's not the tool itself that must take the primary blame, but the use of the tool, the creators, the distributors, and even to some degree the users, though the blame should not be given to the same degree to all of them. You are not without free will, and to claim that you are is simply a way to delegate responsibility to the fact that you have no free will. You're just not with it to the degree that you think free will must have and should have. Because you have a set of choices, and within that set you can choose. And should you move up out of that set and choose again with another set, you can choose again. The choices just aren't always good, always right, always what you want. The limitations of this assertion are obvious. A lot of things made for convenience were not made for our convenience, but for ability in general for some of us. Some of us need these things, some of us don't. But we should be able to do away with what we do not need, even though what we need is ever-changing depending on the state of our reality. For example, many people are saying, children don't know how to write with their hands. Well, do they have to? in the world that they're going to live in? Do you think that they're going to need to write with a pen if they have keyboards and tablets and keyboards within those tablets? Their state and their needs are changing, accommodating their current needs and their current abilities. But we need a balance between accommodation, because some of these things help us because we do need them, and some of these things stunt us because they train us to need them, to never come off the training wheels on this bike. Secondarily, there's not enough research on it to assert with any level of surety to begin with. And honestly, this thought process is quite, it's relatively circular, even if it developed linearly. Overall, I define immaturity and, as the opposite of prudence or wisdom. And to be immature is to delegate the act of discernment to another and the blame of the act itself to them too. This may make your life immediately easy, but the instinct to do so, to make something else do it, to do the shortcut, makes your life immediately easy, but that ease can also create future problems, harder problems, societal problems. It can make things such as your ability to discern or your ability to act at all atrophy from disuse, like our jaws getting smaller generationally because the food we eat is a lot softer. It is a choice, a very easy choice to make your life easier. But the easiest choices are not always the best for those who choose them. There must be a balance between what we want and what we need when it comes to convenience, because they are very much not the same.